The planet Kepler 472 bits was nothing like Earth. Its rocky surface stretched out in shades of rust and gray, with sharp rocks cutting into the landscape like broken glass. The sky hung heavy, a dark orange that looked more like dried blood than a normal sky. This was not a place for comfortable living. This was a place of survival. Sergeant David Kim lay behind a large boulder, his breath coming in short, painful gasps. Blood soaked through his tactical gear, creating a dark stain that spread slowly across his chest and left side. Around him, the remains of his Green Berets squad told a story of a battle that had gone terribly wrong. To his left, Private Mark Rodriguez was unconscious, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. On his right, Corporal Elena Santos was trying to stop the bleeding from a deep wound in her shoulder. Behind them, their communications specialist, Sergeant Lisa Chen, worked frantically on their damaged radio equipment. They had been sent to this godforsaken planet to handle a local insurgent problem. Intelligence suggested a simple mission: clean up a rebel stronghold, extract critical data, and return home. But nothing had gone according to plan. The rebels had been better prepared, better armed, and more desperate than anyone had predicted. High above the rocky terrain, a Krell observation ship hovered silently. Inside, Commander Jae Wong watched the human soldiers with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. The Krell were a technologically advanced species, known across the galaxy for their superior military technology and cold, calculated approach to warfare. "Look at them," Commander Jae Wong said to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Hyun Ki. "They are finished. Primitive humans, thinking they can fight in terrain they don't understand." Lieutenant Hyun Ki adjusted the ship's long-range scanning equipment. The resolution was so powerful that he could see every drop of blood, every painful breath of the wounded humans. "Should we inform their command about their current situation?" he asked, a hint of mockery in his voice. Jae Wong laughed. It was a sharp, cutting sound that echoed through the ship's communication system. "Why? So they can send more to die? No. We will watch, we will record, and we will show the Galactic Confederation how weak these humans truly are." On the planet's surface, David Kim was not giving up. Despite the pain, despite the impossible odds, he was moving. His hands searched through their medical supplies, pulling out bandages, antiseptic, and emergency treatment kits. Each movement was careful, calculated. The Krell continued to watch, their advanced sensors capturing every detail. They saw Kim's hands shaking but still working. They saw how he first treated his teammates before even considering his own wounds. They saw determination in every single one of his movements. What the Krell did not understand was the spirit of the Green Berets. They did not know about the training that turned soldiers into something more than human. They did not understand that for these soldiers, giving up was never an option. Commander Jae Wong zoomed in on David Kim's face. "Look at him," he told Hyun Ki. "He thinks he can survive this. Humans are so delusional." But survival was more than just technology. It was about will. It was about refusing to accept defeat. And David Kim was about to teach the Krell a lesson they would never forget. The observation continued. The humans struggled. The Krell watched and laughed. And somewhere in the universe, fate was preparing a surprise that would change everything. The wind picked up, carrying small rocks and dust across the broken landscape of Kepler 472 bits. Inside their makeshift shelter, Sergeant David Kim worked with a focus that bordered on something more than human determination. Private Rodriguez moaned softly. His leg was still badly broken. But Kim had managed to create a splint using pieces of their damaged equipment. Duct tape, broken rifle components, and a medical support frame came together in a way that would make any field medic proud. Corporal Santos watched Kim with tired eyes. Her shoulder wound was serious, but Kim had cleaned it, applied a special hemostatic gauze, and wrapped it tightly. She knew she was lucky. In many situations, this kind of injury would have been a death sentence. "How bad is it?" Santos whispered, her voice dry and cracked. Kim didn't look up from his work. "We've had worse," he said simply. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't even meant to be comforting. It was just a fact. Sergeant Lisa Chen was working on their communications equipment. Most soldiers would have given up. The radio looked like it had been hit by a truck and then thrown off a cliff. But Chen was different. Her fingers moved quickly, connecting wires, bypassing damaged circuits, creating connections where none should have existed. High above, in the Krell observation ship, Lieutenant Hyun-ki was becoming less amused and more confused. "They should be dead," he muttered to Commander Jae-won. "Look at their equipment. Look at their injuries." The Krell commander zoomed in closer. He watched as Kim pulled out a small medical kit. It was standard issue, nothing special. But what Kim did with it was anything but standard. First, he checked Rodriguez's leg again. The break was clean but dangerous. Kim knew that without proper medical treatment, infection would set in quickly. He used the last of their antiseptic, carefully cleaning the wound. Then he created a temperature-regulating wrap using pieces of their thermal gear. For Santos, he did something even more impressive. Her shoulder wound was deep. In normal circumstances, she would need immediate surgery. Kim used a special gel from their medical kit. It was designed to seal wounds, stop bleeding, and provide temporary protection against infection. His hands moved with a surgeon's precision. The Krell watched in growing disbelief. These were not actions of soldiers about to die. These were the actions of soldiers preparing to survive. "They have no advanced technology," Hyun-ki said. "They have basic equipment. How are they doing this?" Jae-won didn't answer. Something about the human surgeon was making him uncomfortable. The way Kim moved, the way he thought. It was different from any alien species the Krell had encountered. Chen finally looked up from the radio. "I've got something," she said to Kim. Her voice was quiet but strong. Kim nodded. "Good work," he replied. It was a simple response, but it carried weight. It said everything about their team, their training, their spirit. The Krell continued to watch. What they saw was not weakness. What they saw was something far more dangerous. They saw humans adapting, humans surviving, humans turning impossible situations into opportunities. Outside, the wind continued to blow. The rocky landscape of Kepler 472 bits remained unchanged. But something was changing, and the Krell were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. Survival was not about technology. It was about will. And these humans had will in abundance. Lieutenant Hyun-ki's fingers moved quickly across the advanced control panel of the Krell observation ship. Something was happening that he didn't understand. The human communication specialist, Sergeant Lisa Chen, was doing something impossible. "Commander," Hyun-ki called out, "you need to see this." Jae-won floated closer to the screens. What they saw made no sense. The damaged radio, a piece of equipment that should have been totally destroyed, was coming back to life. But it wasn't just working. It was transforming. On the planet's surface, Lisa Chen worked with a kind of focused madness. Her hands moved fast, connecting wires that shouldn't connect. She pulled out a small toolkit from her cargo pocket, something most soldiers would have thrown away days ago. Each movement was careful. Each connection was precise. Sergeant David Kim watched her work. He didn't interrupt. He knew better. Chen was in her element. Communications was her world, and right now she was rewriting the rules of what was possible. "I'm getting something," Chen said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of excitement underneath. The radio crackled. It wasn't a clean sound. It was a broken, jagged noise that spoke of damage and repair, but it was a signal. And for a team left for dead, a signal meant hope. Up in the Krell ship, Commander Jae-won leaned closer to the screen. "How are they doing this?" he muttered. The humans were using technology that was centuries behind the Krell. Their equipment was broken. Their bodies were wounded. By all logic, they should be dead. But they weren't. Chen continued her work. She pulled out a small chip from another piece of equipment, their night vision gear. Most soldiers would have considered it trash. She saw it as a potential solution. With careful movements, she integrated the chip into the radio's broken circuitry. "Got it," she said suddenly. The radio came to life. Not just a crackle this time, a full, clear signal. It wasn't strong, but it was there. Hyun-Ki couldn't believe what he was seeing. "This is impossible," he said to Jae-Wong. "Their equipment is junk. They have no advanced technology. How can they do this?" Kim looked at Chen and nodded. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. In their world, in their team, such a nod was a medal of honor. It said, "Good job. I knew you could do it." The storm outside was getting worse. Wind whipped across the rocky landscape. Dust and small rocks flew through the air. But inside their shelter, the team was calm. They were alive. They were working. On the Krell ship, the mood had changed. What was once mockery was now something else. Confusion. Respect. Something that the Krell had never felt before when looking at humans. Chen spoke into the radio. Her message was simple. Coordinates. Status. A request for extraction. But the way she spoke told a bigger story. This was a team that was not going to give up. This was a team that was going to survive. The Krell watched, and for the first time, they were not laughing. The moment Shen restored the radio signal, Sergeant David Kim's entire approach changed. What looked like a desperate survival situation was now something else entirely. A trap. A plan. "Move Rodriguez 2 meters to the left," Kim said quietly to Santos. His voice was calm. Too calm for someone in their situation. Corporal Santos looked confused. "Why?" she whispered. Kim's eyes never left the rocky landscape outside their shelter. "Because we're being watched," he said simply. Up in the Krell observation ship, Commander Jae-Wong and Lieutenant Hyun-Ki realized something was different. The humans were no longer just surviving. They were doing something else. Kim began to move their equipment. Not randomly. Not in a way that looked like panic. Each movement was calculated. Each piece of gear was placed with a purpose. To an untrained eye, it would look like normal survival behavior. But to someone watching closely, something else was happening. "They know," Hyun-Ki said suddenly. "They know we're watching." Jae-Wong zoomed the ship's sensors closer. What he saw made no sense. The humans were creating false positions, leaving small traces that looked like movement. Broken equipment positioned to suggest activity in places where no one was actually moving. Sergeant Chen continued working with the radio, but now her movements had a different rhythm. She was sending signals, not just trying to call for help, but sending something else. Patterns, hints, information that looked random but wasn't. Private Rodriguez, despite his broken leg, understood the plan. Even injured, he helped move small reflective pieces of their gear, pieces that would catch the Krell sensors, pieces that would show movement where no movement existed. "They're playing with us," Hyun-Ki said, a note of respect replacing his earlier mockery. Jae-Wong said nothing. He was too busy watching. The humans were turning their apparent weakness into a strategy. They weren't just trying to survive. They were gathering information. They were sending messages. Kim knew exactly what he was doing. Years of Special Forces training had taught him one critical lesson. Information is the most powerful weapon. And right now, they were collecting information about their observers. Each movement was a test. Each placed piece of equipment was a probe. The humans were learning about Krell scanning technology, about their observation methods, about their limitations. Outside, the storm was getting worse. Wind howled across the rocky landscape. Dust and small rocks flew through the air. But inside their shelter, the Green Beret team worked with a cold, calculated precision. Santos understood now. She started helping Kim, placing equipment in ways that would confuse any long-range sensors. Rodriguez adjusted their shelter's thermal signature. Chen continued sending her coded messages. The Krell watched, no longer laughing. No longer mocking. Now they were studying. Now they were worried. They're not just surviving, Jae Wong said quietly. They're hunting. The humans had turned the tables. What was supposed to be an observation had become something else. A lesson. A warning. And the Krell were about to learn that underestimating humans was the most dangerous mistake anyone could make. The storm was coming. Not just any storm. This was a Kepler 472-bit storm, a monster that could strip paint from metal and turn rocks into dust. Commander Jae Wong watched the approaching wall of wind and debris on the ship's sensors. This will finish them, he said to Lieutenant Hyun-ki. His voice held a hint of final judgment. But the humans were not waiting to be finished. Sergeant David Kim moved with a speed that seemed impossible for someone with his injuries. His hands worked fast, securing their shelter. But this was not just about protection. This was about survival. About turning a natural disaster into an opportunity. Chen, how's our communication? Kim asked. Lisa Chen looked up from her rebuilt radio. Signal stronger than before, she said. The storm's electromagnetic interference is actually helping us mask our transmission. Private Rodriguez, still dealing with his broken leg, helped secure their medical supplies. Even injured, he was thinking ahead. Even hurt, he was contributing. Corporal Santos prepared their emergency gear. Water, food, medical supplies. Each item was placed with care. Each movement was calculated. Up in the Krell observation ship, something was changing. The humans were not panicking. They were preparing. The storm hit like a hammer. Winds that could cut through metal. Debris that moved faster than bullets. Any normal team would have been destroyed. But this was not a normal team. Kim had created a shelter that was more than just a place to hide. It was a system. Thermal barriers pulled from their gear created insulation. Broken equipment was used to reinforce their position. Every piece of their damaged gear became a tool for survival. We're going to use this, Kim said to his team. His voice was calm. His eyes were focused. The Krell watched in disbelief. The humans were not just surviving the storm. They were using it. Chen's radio continued to work. Somehow, impossibly, she was sending and receiving signals through the electromagnetic chaos. Each burst of communication was carefully timed. Each message was a puzzle. Rodriguez used the storm's noise to check their perimeter. His broken leg didn't stop him from using sound-dampening techniques to listen for potential threats. Years of training had taught him that information was survival. Santos monitored their medical supplies. The storm's static electricity could damage sensitive equipment, but she was prepared. Protective coverings. Careful placement. Nothing was left to chance. On the Krell ship, the mood had completely changed. They're doing something, Hyun-ki said. This is not normal survival behavior. Jae Wong said nothing. He was watching. Learning. The storm raged outside. Winds that could destroy cities. Debris that could kill on impact. But inside their shelter, the Green Beret team was calm. They were more than surviving. They were planning. Hours passed. The storm continued. But the humans remained unbroken, undefeated. We're going to be okay, Kim said quietly. It wasn't a hope. It was a statement of fact. The Krell continued to watch, and they were no longer laughing. News travels fast in the Galactic Confederation. But on this day, news traveled even faster. The recordings from the Krell observation ship began to spread, not through official channels, not through military networks, but through something more powerful. Communication between species. Whispers. Rumors. In the central communication hub of the Galactic Confederation, an analyst named Director Park watched the video for the third time. Her eyes were wide. Her hands were shaking. This can't be real, she muttered. The video showed everything. The wounded human soldiers, the impossible survival, the strategic brilliance. 4 humans against what seemed like certain death. And they were winning. Lieutenant Hyun-ki's original recording had been meant to mock. Instead, it became something else. a document of human resilience that would change everything. On the Krell ship, Commander Jae-won was being called to answer for his actions. The leadership was not happy. What was supposed to be a simple observation had turned into something much bigger. "You recorded humans in their most vulnerable moment," the senior commander said, "and you made them look like heroes." Jae-won said nothing. What could he say? The truth was there in the recordings. The humans had done something impossible. Back on Kepler 472 bits, Sergeant David Kim and his team were unaware of the galactic storm they had started. They were still focused on one thing: survival. One thing: getting home. Chen continued working on their communication equipment. Rodriguez was healing. Santos was monitoring their supplies. Each of them knew their role. Each of them was part of something bigger than themselves. The Galactic Confederation's communication channels began to light up. Species from 100 different worlds were watching the same video, watching 4 humans do what no one thought possible. "Look at how they treat each other," a Zorn diplomat said, watching the recording. "Look at their unity. Look at their improvisation," a Krell technician commented. "They use broken equipment like it's advanced technology." "Look at their will to survive," another observer said. The video showed Kim treating Rodriguez's leg. It showed Chen rebuilding their radio from destroyed parts. It showed Santos protecting their medical supplies. Small moments, powerful moments. Director Park made a decision. This video would not be buried. This story would be told. She began preparing a report. Not a military report, not a technical report, a human report. A story of 4 soldiers who refused to give up, who turned certain death into a victory. On the Krell ship, Hyun-ki was being questioned, but he was not apologetic. Something had changed in him. Something he had learned from watching the humans. "They are not weak," he said simply. "They are something else." The storm on Kepler 472 bits was ending. The human team was preparing for their next move. They had no idea they had just changed galactic history. 4 soldiers, one impossible situation. A story that would be told for generations. The Krell were no longer laughing. No one was laughing anymore. The rescue team arrived like a ghost in the night. No warning, no massive display of power, just precision and speed. Sergeant David Kim heard them first, not with his ears, with something deeper, something trained into him over years of special operations, a sense that told him help was coming. "Movement at 2 o'clock, he whispered to Corporal Santos. Santos didn't ask how he knew. She trusted him. She moved their injured team members, creating a defensive position that looked like a normal resting spot, but it was anything but normal. The first signs of the rescue team were subtle. A slight disturbance in the dust. A shadow that moved differently from the wind. Then nothing. Private Rodriguez gripped his weapon. Even with a broken leg, he was ready. His training had taught him one thing: be prepared. Sergeant Lisa Chen continued monitoring their communication equipment. She was sending out microbursts of information. Not a full signal. Just hints, breadcrumbs for the rescue team to follow. Then they came. Not with loud engines, not with massive firepower. They arrived like ghosts, special forces operators who moved like they were part of the landscape, part of the planet itself. Kim recognized the approach. These were not regular soldiers. These were hunters, trackers, the kind of team sent when normal rescue missions would fail. The first team member appeared, then another. They moved in a pattern that made them almost invisible. Dust and rocks seemed to bend around them. Their equipment was advanced, but it was their skill that made them deadly. Status. The lead rescuer whispered to Kim. Kim's report was quick, precise. No extra words. Rodriguez, broken leg. Santos, shoulder wound. Equipment partially damaged. Radio functional. The rescue team leader nodded. One simple movement that said everything. These were professionals who understood each other without words. What the Krell observation team didn't understand was happening right in front of them. This was not just a rescue. This was a statement. Hyun-Ki watched the screens in disbelief. The humans moved like no species he had ever seen. They were not just a rescue team. They were something else. Chen's radio came to life, but not with a normal signal. With a coded message that would only make sense to other Special Forces operators. A message that said more in its silence than in its words. The rescue team began to move the injured. But it wasn't a simple extraction. They were collecting everything. Every piece of damaged equipment. Every scrap of information. Commander Jae-Woong realized something important. This was not just about saving 4 soldiers. This was about something bigger. Rodriguez was moved carefully. His broken leg was treated with a precision that made Krell medical technology look primitive. Santos received treatment that stopped her wound from getting worse. Kim watched everything. His eyes missed nothing. Even now, even rescued, he was collecting information, watching, learning. The Krell observation ship recorded everything. But this time, they were not mocking. They were studying. In less than 30 minutes, the team was gone, like they had never been there. Only small traces in the dust showed they had arrived at all. The message was clear. Humans were not to be underestimated. The rescue was complete, but the story was just beginning. The Krell Confederation headquarters was not a place of emotion. It was a place of cold calculations, of precise decisions. But today, something was different. Commander Jae-Woong stood before the High Council. The massive chamber was silent. Hundreds of alien eyes watched him, judged him. "Explain," said the senior counselor. One word, but it carried the weight of entire civilizations. Jae-Woong knew this moment would define his entire career. The recording played behind him. 4 human soldiers, wounded, broken, surviving against impossible odds. The video showed everything. How they survived, how they adapted, how they turned a hopeless situation into a strategic advantage. Lieutenant Hyun-Ki stood nearby. He was no longer the same officer who had mocked the humans. Something had changed in him. He had learned something important. "We underestimated them," Hyun-Ki said quietly. "Completely and totally underestimated them." The council members watched the video again and again. Each viewing revealed something new, something they had missed before. Kim treating Rodriguez's leg, Chen rebuilding their radio, Santos protecting their supplies. Small moments, powerful moments. "This is not just about 4 soldiers," the senior counselor said. "This is about an entire species." Investigations began immediately, not just into Jae-Woong's actions, but into everything about humans. Their training, their technology, their spirit. Military analysts worked day and night. They pulled apart every second of the recording, every movement, every decision. What they found scared them. Humans were not just another species. They were something else entirely. The human Special Forces team had collected more intelligence during their survival than most trained spy teams could in months. They had turned a disaster into an opportunity. Hyun-Ki's original recording, meant to mock, had become the most studied piece of visual data in the Galactic Confederation. They used broken equipment like it was advanced technology. One analyst noted, "Look how they protect each other," another said. "Their communication is more advanced than our most complex systems," a third added. Jae-Woong was stripped of his command, but not in disgrace. Something more complicated was happening. He was being reassigned to study humans. The Krell military began to change. Training programs were rewritten. Strategies were modified, all because of 4 wounded soldiers on a distant planet. Director Park from the Galactic Confederation's central hub prepared her final report. It was not a military document. It was a story of survival, of human spirit. The report would be sent to every species in the Confederation. A warning, a lesson. Do not underestimate humans. Sergeant David Kim and his team had no idea they had just changed galactic history. They were simply doing what they were trained to do. Survive. Adapt. Overcome. The Krell were no longer laughing. No one was laughing anymore. Humans had sent a message, loud and clear. We are here. We are different. And we will survive. 6 months after the incident on Kepler 472 bits, everything had changed. Sergeant David Kim sat in a briefing room. Around him were representatives from species he had only read about in reports. Zorn diplomats, Krell military advisors, Galactic Confederation leaders. They wanted to hear his story, not just the official report, but the real story. We were just doing our job, Kim said simply. But it was never that simple. Private Rodriguez was there too. His leg had healed, but something else had changed in him. In all of them. They were no longer just soldiers. They were something more. Sergeant Lisa Chen sat quietly. Her rebuilt radio, the one she had created from broken parts, was now a museum piece, a symbol of human innovation. Corporal Santos looked around the room. The same aliens who would have ignored humans months ago were now listening. Really listening. The Krell delegation was different now. Commander Jae Wong, once a mocker, now studied humans with a respect that bordered on reverence. Lieutenant Hyun Ki had become something of an expert on human military tactics. "Tell us how you survived," a Zorn diplomat asked. Kim looked at his team. They didn't need words. They communicated with small movements, looks, a language only they understood. "Survival is not about technology," Kim said. "It's about adaptation, about working together." The room listened. Every species represented was learning something new. Director Park from the Galactic Confederation watched carefully. The video of their survival had changed everything. Humans were no longer seen as a young, inexperienced species. They were something else. Rodriguez spoke next. "We protect each other," he said, "no matter what." Those simple words meant more than any technical report, more than any advanced military strategy. Chen explained how she rebuilt their radio, not with technical terms, but with a simple story of determination, of refusing to give up. Santos talked about medical improvisation, about using what you have, about thinking beyond standard procedures. The alien representatives took notes, but they were learning something that couldn't be written down, something deeper. Outside the briefing room, the story had spread, across 100 worlds, through 1,000 communication networks. The tale of 4 soldiers who refused to die, who turned certain defeat into victory. "Humans are different," Hyun Ki said quietly to Jae-won. No longer a statement of mockery, but of genuine respect. The Galactic Confederation was changing. Military strategies were being rewritten. Training programs were being modified. All because of what happened on one distant planet. 4 soldiers, one impossible situation. A story that would be told for generations. Kim looked at his team. They had survived. They had done more than survive. They had shown the galaxy something important. Humanity was not just another species. They were something else entirely. As the briefing ended, one message was clear: never underestimate humans. The galaxy was learning, and the learning had only just begun.